Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Tonight is an episode that's really important to both Jim and I because we're going to talk a little bit more about victimology. And it's not simply about looking backward, it's about understanding the world the victim lived in. The better we understand Lindsay's routines, her relationships, her fears, and her social environment, the better we're going to understand who may have targeted her and why. One of the biggest mistakes in homicide investigations is focusing only on the crime scene and missing the social ecosystem surrounding the victim. Tonight, Tanya Buziak helps us examine that ecosystem. Jim, why don't you take us off from here?
Sure. And Tanya, on behalf of Ray and our whole Cold Red staff, welcome to Cold Red. And yeah, we're winding down tonight. Part two, if you will, starting back in January, I guess was part one of the 2008 murder of your cousin, Lindsay Buziak. And we're fortunate to have you with us. And I didn't realize a little while ago that this whole thing came together with Cold Red because of kind of a strange, coincidental, serendipitous meeting with one of our show's favorite, Chuck Boyle. I go back 50 years with him as store detectives in Philadelphia. He became a Philly cop. I was a police officer in Philly area, suburbs, and then FBI. And then we worked cases together back then. Then he's been on Cold Red a few times. But we probably wouldn't have you on or discussing your cousin's case if it wasn't for a chance meeting you had, not with Chuck himself, but his daughter, Tanya. So, again, welcome to the show. But could you walk our audience how you even got on our show tonight?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And I really just wanted to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for all the work that I know you're putting in and caring about this. I know you guys have a lot going on, and I really appreciate it. I really do. And yeah, and I appreciate Chuck because it was his daughter. I live upstate New York, and I I take care of a clothing store for my landlord of my building that I live in, and I just happen to be sometimes when it's slow, I put my headphones in and I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts and stuff like that. And when they walked in, I had to take my headphones and I apologized and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm true crime podcast." And I don't even know, I talk a lot. So I we got to talking and I brought up Lindsay's case, which I don't normally do. That's another thing. I don't think I've ever randomly brought it up to a stranger, except that she was really friendly, and that's just how the conversation went. And she brought up her dad. She brought up the Cold Red podcast and you guys, and she said I think she was struck by the story. We had a really heartfelt conversation. So I gave her my email, and I kind of didn't expect to hear from her again, even and sweet talking to her. And the next day, I think they were just up here actually on a weekend trip too. I think they were in an Airbnb because a lot of people just come up here for the weekend from the city. And she came back in and said that she had immediately spoken to Chuck, her father, and that she said he's gonna bring it to Ray and Fitz and the podcast. And then I think it was shortly after that she connected me with the producer of your show, Matt. And so that's how that all happened, and I was blown away. I was blown away.
Well, they call it kismet, serendipity, coincidence, whatever. But this is like, I think, our eighth or ninth episode on this
Yeah.
case alone, and we're doing our best to try to resolve it. And quite frankly, besides Lindsay's father, who was our guest of those first few episodes, you're the only other family member, and correct me if I'm wrong there, Ray, but I think that's correct. And it means a lot a lot to us that you would be here. And so you lived through this, and Ray, I know you have some questions. Maybe we can go back to the beginning, what it was like growing up, at least as a cousin with
Right.
Lindsay.
Well, I will say, so I grew up about an hour, 2 hours on the island, on Vancouver Island, south of Victoria, through my elementary, junior high school, first year of high school. I was in a place called the Comox Valley. But I moved to Victoria. I went to, actually, oddly enough, I went to a boarding school in a little place called Mill Bay, which is about a 10-minute bike ride from Shawnigan Lake, which is another interesting point. Because I know you guys were talking about Kevin McDonald, I think his name was.
Yes.
So
Kyle
Kyle
McDonald.
McDonald,
Mhm.
Shawnigan Lake, which me and my roommate from boarding school used to ride our bikes so she could sneak and meet her boyfriend to Shawnigan Lake Private School. So it was right there, and I can speak to how tiny and remote those areas are. But so I went there for my 11th grade year of high school, and then I moved to Victoria and I graduated from Oak Bay High School, which is in Victoria. And so we weren't close with Jeff. Is actually my dad's cousin, first cousin. So I guess that makes Lindsay my second cousin. But I think we have a very small family. So I think I only have 2 first cousins on my mom's side. So we were similar in age. And I remember Lindsay and her sister from probably like 8 or 9 years old. And then we didn't have any contact for a long time. Now, I don't know why, but I would say about 6 months before this all happened, in my 12th year, as I said, I went to Oak Bay Senior Secondary, which was in Victoria. One of my really good friends in 12th grade was a girl whose younger cousin, would hang out with us. And she was younger than us by, I think, 3 years. I got a message on Facebook from her, I think it was June 2017, saying, "Hey, I just met your cousin, Lindsay. She's an angel. You guys remind me of each." I said, "Oh my goodness." So I reached out to Lindsay on Facebook and I said, "You just met my friend from Oak Bay and we need to reconnect. I'm in New York now." I was in New York City and Brooklyn at the time. I said, "Come and visit me and we should hang out and reconnect." And she said, "Oh, I would love to." And that was 6 months before. We never obviously connected. But so I wasn't really close with her, but I have friends that ended up knowing her and being in her sort of friend group.
Well, based upon what you know about Lindsay, what drew people to her? What made her stand out socially? Based upon what your friends may have told you, a lot of times offenders are going to target people based upon observable traits. It could be her beauty. It could be she's very warm. She's very trusting. Or it could just be a perceived vulnerability that someone thought she had.
Yeah. And this is obviously what people have told me, and just my short on Facebook, and just sort of looking at her pictures, knowing that she has a Buziak quality about her. She was probably, and I talk with Jeff all the time now as well. She was outgoing, pretty, probably Canadians are funny in my opinion, but she was probably hilarious, charismatic, warm. I get the feeling she is the type of person that makes you feel good about yourself and makes you feel comfortable. She wasn't shy. She was inviting to people and you had fun around her, and just based upon the fact that this particular girl who was friends with her, she was than me, but I really liked her. This girl that ended up knowing Lindsay, I kind of took her under my wing as someone I really liked, like a little sister almost. And she said that we were a lot alike, and I was very social. I was very all the time, fun, laughing. All I wanted to do was laugh and joke around. I think she was a lot more focused and serious probably than I was, but that's how I picture her. And this girl, I'll just say her first name, Tana, so I don't get confused. She was saying these things before this all happened to Lindsay, which I think says something, because a lot of times if someone passes away or something terrible happens to them, you reflect on all the good things and you're gonna, but this was before this happened. And she said, angel was her words. She said she's an angel. Just, I love being around her, So I've never heard a bad word about her.
Was she very trusting, or was she cautious, or just somewhere in between?
That I don't know. I think in general, I know it sounds kind of a very generalized speaking, but in Canada, there is a difference. People talk to people. In small towns, when you're driving down the street, even if you don't live there, if a person drives by you, they wave to you. Like where my parents live now, they have a farm in Saskatchewan. You drive down the road and you've got you're holding your steering wheel and you do the little finger wave to everybody. So I think just there's more, especially I've lived in New York, I've lived in Vancouver, I've lived in Victoria, I've lived in Los Angeles. There's a different feeling in Canada of a generalized, more trust personality, in my opinion.
So needless to say, she was outgoing. She was a people person, correct?
I would say. I think you kind of have to be also to be successful in real estate, right? Like
Sure. And I wonder if the other friends and associates around her took that as a positive or as something of which they should have been cautionary, that in terms of her effervescence, that's my word, but it sounds like how she was sort of in a social setting. And I wonder if somehow someone looked at that the wrong way and felt she may be some sort of a liability to people. I guess what I'm trying to say is there some way that you can have that personality, but in the wrong environment, and it can be misconstrued?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I wasn't in those environments, but when I lived in Victoria, after I graduated from high school, I spent a year living there on my own. And although it's not, I think that the population is, or was then, something like 750,000 or close to people. There's two things that I was thinking about in my head. One is in Victoria, I do remember the nightlife. And when you went out at night, it was a different place than it was during the day. When they say the newlyweds and the nearly deads, we had that phrase when I was there back in, 95 or 96, whenever it was, 96, I think. But I remember that at night, like there was a lot of prostitution. It felt dark at night. Drugs were everywhere, as they were in every other city I've been in. But there was something about Victoria that was just a little, it's the most beautiful place you've ever seen. But there was something about the night. I was going to bars when I was underage, and I saw what was going on in the bars. And I think it would be pretty impossible to be a young social person like she was of age. I'm talking about me when I was, the drinking age is 19, and I think I was going when I was 18 to the bars and stuff, But you don't feel, but I sort of felt a darkness compared to moving forward in my life, how cities, and looking back at how Victoria seemed. I don't think that you could be somebody that goes out and not have been surrounded by somebody who was involved in something, whether it was a guy who sold pot in the neighborhood, or it would be impossible to be a social person that went out at night and not met someone who knew someone, that type of thing. Literally impossible.
And if you're very attractive, like everyone seems to describe Lindsay, and we've seen the pictures, she's going to attract men, and some of the men that you just described, the pot dealers. I'm sure straight, regular guys too, but also it looks like, and I don't think anyone's denying this, including Jeff, her father, that she did get into a crowd of some of the people you just described that may be doing things in Victoria and in bars that perhaps they shouldn't be doing, and not necessarily just on a smaller scale. And that
Right. You
unfortunately
wouldn't know.
became her social circle.
Yeah, I mean, her main social circle, I don't know. I have zero idea. But judging from my experience, which I think would be similar, there's people that when you go out, you say, hey, how's it going? You might know their name, but you're not being like, hey, we want to go out for dinner tomorrow night, and phoning them and texting them and doing things one-on-one with them. But you know them in a social setting. You know, I don't know as far as her close group of friends. I know that I've watched all the episodes. I think it was Gail that said one of her close girlfriends had been dating somebody who's known to be one of the main guys. I think his name was Vic or something. There's a lot. But I could just picture, I'm a very visual person. In my head, I can just picture like they're out maybe drinking, and maybe her close friend is crying to Lindsay about something, little fight. I know that Gail said they broke up. But I could just picture this happening to anybody I know, where maybe she's fighting with her boyfriend and he says, did you say anything to anybody about this? And she said, well, I was at the bar the other night and I was crying, and Lindsay was comforting me, and I said something to her. There's just so many could have been this, could have been that. Well, and it doesn't necessarily mean that she was in the middle of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been anything.
Well, Tanya, let me ask you this. Say 3 to 6 months before Lindsay's murder, a lot of times when the murder occurred, first thing close friends and family are doing, they're reaching out to others that were close to Lindsay, and they're finding out what happened. Did any of her mutual friends tell you or state to you that they noticed changes in her stress level, her anxiety, new people she was running into, or routines?
No, I wasn't in close enough contact with her for them to have thought to reach out to me. That being said, the girl Tanis I was talking about earlier, I think she just reached out to me and said, I'm sorry about what happened, because I had at the time been living in New York for quite a while, in New York City and Brooklyn. I was in a band, I was touring. Although there was some interesting things that happened, my sister was more involved. We had the Facebook groups of trying to figure out what was going on, that I could talk to my sister. I did get a phone call while I was on tour about somebody that was posting on one of their Facebook Help Find Lindsay sites or whatever, that my sister texted me to make sure you don't accept a request from this person. I still remember what the handle name was because she typed it. She said, don't freak out, but if this person friends request you, make sure you deny it. And I was like, you can't just say that. I'm about to go on stage right now. And I knew it had something to do with Lindsay because it was quite shortly after, I think. And I went on my Facebook and I had a person and I denied it. And when I finally got to talking to her on the phone, later that night, she said that it was somebody who had been leaving. I can't remember the word she used. This was a long time ago. Like saying not nice things about Lindsay or something like that. And my sister told me that the police were looking into this person because of the comments that they'd been leaving on this Facebook page. And then I denied the request, and then the person requested me again. So, and at the time I couldn't really handle thinking about that. It really was a disturbing thing for me to think about. So it wasn't until sort of recently that I started being able to dig it sort of further in, but that happened.
The reason why I asked you about that, and the fact that, was there a point that she became uncomfortable where she felt someone was paying unusual attention to her? Did she complain, or she ever say anything to her friends about, she's having problems sleeping, or there's an emotional state? She's very nervous. The reason being that I asked that is because sometimes victims will perceive danger before they even really consciously understand it. And I think that those behavioral shifts, if they occurred, can become very significant.
Well, I mean, I think there is well documented that she did feel uncomfortable about the meeting. I didn't hear from anyone, from her directly or any of her friends directly during that time. But from everything I've read, and there's a lot, the consistent reporting is that she was nervous about, or could tell that the accent was fake. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
why would you even consider that?
Just so we're clear, you're talking about the meeting with these alleged clients,
the phone call
in the house, where of course she was eventually murdered. Just so that's
exactly. In my mind, and if she's anything like me or whatever, I wouldn't even notice the accent seemed fake if I wasn't already feeling a bit weird and paying extra attention, because someone could do a fake accent to me, especially over the phone, and probably the cell phones back then weren't as clear and everything. She must have had to have been listening for something, in my opinion, even notice that it sounded put on or fake. Or even, if you weren't suspicious in some way and it sounded fake, you probably wouldn't even make note of it. You might be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm putting myself in her position, would I go, well, that sounded like a fake accent out of nowhere? No, I probably would. Something was initially already making me pay extra attention.
Why is it, and maybe you know this answer, maybe you don't, but it's come up quite often in people talking to us, that several people in that office, in that real estate office, some people said that she was very anxious and worried about meeting, and others, like her boyfriend Jason and the person that ran that office, Jason's mother Shirley, said she had no concerns about that meeting. It's really, I mean, there's two different ends of the circle here.
I've only heard that recently or once, that she wasn't worried about it. That was news to me. I've always heard that that's why Jason came to meet her there
after the fact.
I don't know where that's coming from, that she wasn't at all worried about it.
Yeah.
That to me that's not true, because it just isn't true to me. I've every account of what I've heard, and I think there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's pages of her day planner that are posted online, like in her handwriting, that say, like, quote unquote, the Mexican people, with quotes around it. There's screenshots of it. So I don't believe that's true.
And with a retired RCMP realtor working in the same office with her, who offered to go there with her that day. And this is again where it gets conflicting, confounding, confusing. Why, she said, no, I'll handle it. I'll be okay. And I believe
what she said was, don't worry, Jason is going to come.
Yeah, Jason's going to be there. That's where I was going. But of course, Jason wasn't there for the meeting itself, and he got there after the fact. So some confusing elements to that whole thing. But I would like to think, the retired officer there, the retired Mountie there, could have made a difference that day. But we'll never know that.
Right. So, which kind of leads me to think that it doesn't seem like Lindsay was suspicious of Jason harming her necessarily, because if she truly was nervous about it, and also nervous about Jason in some sort of way, why would she ask him to be the one? That being said, I've watched the very few interviews that Jason's given. I've reached out to him personally myself as well. It's very easy for us to be quick to watch something and go, well, he doesn't seem upset. I watched the the police video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, where they bring him in, I think it's the next day, to do a walkthrough of the actual crime scene in the house. And of course, upon watching it, the first thing I did was say, he's got to have something to do with it. Look at him. Like, because in my mind, I know what the inside of the D'Souza house looks like, even though I don't. And I have it all in my mind. I want to hear the descriptions of Lindsay setting to me, because I'm a very visual person. But he did have it in his mind, and very, very freshly. And I know we can say you never know how you're going to react. But I will say that his reaction caused me to say, wow, he's either almost sociopathic to not be able to show any angst or anxiety on his face. The part of him running directly up the stairs to me is weird, and telling Cohen to go downstairs first. And then afterwards, the thing that got me, because I tried to stay open-minded, and I think in the beginning I was sort of like, well, the police cleared him, looking back way too quickly, in my opinion. So keeping an open mind, but then afterwards, if I could put myself in somebody else's position, which you can't really do, but I did. I know that he must have known that he was going to be the first person that they spoke to, and that a lot of people know that the first person, whatever the percentage of time is, that's closest to them is usually, you know, the husband, the boyfriend. We've all seen that TV show. But he didn't, if I knew that the general public was in their minds accusing me of doing something, everything in me would want to find the person who did do it, so that I could say, see, like, it wasn't me. Even if they were going to break up or whatever, which I think if her close friend said that she was giving the Christmas presents back and planning on breaking up, she probably was. Does that mean he killed her? No. But he loved her. They at some point, they lived together for a year or whatever it was. Did he call the police? Why is he not involved in at least the first year, the march for Lindsay? Why isn't he in everyone's face? If it were me and I didn't do something, or I didn't know, if I didn't have any knowledge whatsoever, and I would be furious, and I would be the first person knocking on the door. Because not only is it clearing your name from the general public and their suspicion of you, but it's also finding the person who did this to somebody who at one point you did love, you know?
Those are great questions. Those are great questions, Tanya. I mean,
I've reached out to him, and in a very non-accusatory way, I didn't get a response. I didn't get a response from the Saanich Police Department. How do you not? I have the same last name as her. We have the same face, some of our facial features. I'm clearly related to her, and you don't even respond. And my email was only, hey, you should check out the VDOC Society. I quoted your guys' website. I can send you the screenshots of my message directly to them. I said, it's free of cost to you. I, as a family member, am not allowed to reach out to them. It has to be you guys, but you should check it out. I just watched a TV show where they solved a cold case for a small police department who didn't have enough manpower, that reached out to them. I don't know. In my opinion, if you're a new investigator that's been put on a case that's 18 years old, why wouldn't you jump on it? It's like a gift being handed to you on a platter. Not only if, let's say you guys sit with them and nothing happens, wouldn't they want the experience, the knowledge from all these that have the experience that you do? It would be amazing for them, for their career even.
Tanya, when we end this episode, we're going to have a direct address to the Saanich Police Department, and I would, for your sake and the audience, and if any Saanich people are listening, stand by, and we're going to address some of those issues you just brought up to them directly. But I guess we've moved back and forth around this.
Sorry.
I
Yeah.
hate to bring up a very specific moment in your life, but if I understand correctly, I know you're a musician, you were in a band. Can you tell us the exact moment that you learned about what happened to Lindsay?
Yeah, I think as with everything else, I found out I'm the baby in my family, in my immediate family, and I seem to find things out. They seem to protect my emotions. I believe that I was on tour when I found out about this. I don't remember how long after it was, but I know that it was like everybody knew except for me. And I was kind of in my own bubble. Oh, yeah.
Your band was Wakey Wakey, is that correct?
Yeah. I think it hit me so hard, and I couldn't believe it just because I'd never even heard of anybody who'd ever been murdered in my life, you know. And I lived in all those major cities in Canada, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because I had, ever since I was a little girl, even back as I can remember watching like Unsolved Mysteries. Remember that show back in the 80s? And
Sure.
like all those shows on A&E or whatever it was, I was always interested in. I always tell my parents I kind of wish I would have been a detective or a private investigator or a lawyer, because I've watched so many of them, and now all of a sudden this is my family member, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So I think for a while, and I was having nightmares and stuff for a while too, so I think I had to sort of shelve it for a little while, you know. And then actually, this is another interesting thing. My ex-husband owned a restaurant and a bar in Brooklyn, and I was bartending one night at one of the bars, and I used to run an open mic like for musicians to play music at the bar. And it was after the music was over, and there was these girls sitting at the bar, and they started talking about Lindsay's case. I hadn't been introduced to them. I didn't know who they were, just customers.
Interesting.
And they were talking about how everyone knows it was her boyfriend or he was involved. And I just walked up, because as a bartender, you're kind of always listening to everybody's conversations. And I said, "Are you guys talking about Lindsay?" And they said, "Yeah." And I was like, "That's my cousin." I don't think they believed me, actually. But they were definitely saying that everybody had been talking about that they believed that Jason was involved. At the time, I didn't know anything. Now I've listened to, read, watched every single thing about it. But yeah, that struck me. I was like, how is this possible? This tiny bar on a Tuesday night at 1 a.m. I just happened to overhear these girls from Victoria that were visiting Brooklyn or whatever. It was really weird.
You know, Jupiter's aligned with Mars a few times with you now, including Chuck Boyle's daughter, and now this event in the
there has been a lot of things for
bar
sure
in Brooklyn. But I mean, at least these two involving Lindsay and her homicide. So, and it somehow, at least meeting with Chuck's daughter, it brought you with us here tonight.
Can I ask you guys a question really quick? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm not sure what's okay to say in names or anything, so I'm going to be careful about this. Last week when you were talking about with Gail, the overkill aspect, this sort of, as they say, overkill.
Meaning the multiple stab wounds, 40 or so stab wounds, yes.
Yeah, which I haven't actually been able to track anything down that actually says officially how many they were. But my thoughts on that are, as you guys said, that it appears that it's obviously been planned, right? The other thing is, I have one of my best friends is the captain of British Columbia ferries. And I reached out to him and said, is it at all possible that there's surveillance cameras from that time? But I did ask him if he could look into it for me. Because they would have had to have traveled over on the ferry, the couple. But as far as the overkill, I think maybe Fitz, you touched on this, which I thought if it was staged to look like it was involved in drugs, could it not have been staged the other way around, to where if it was a hit or someone had been paid or it was organized through some nefarious organized crime, syndicate or whatever, that they staged it to look like it was a personal frenzied attack of overkill, right? Could it have been the other way around?
Well, of course, there's possibilities and probabilities. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I would say no. Stabbing someone, and I don't know if we have the exact count, but it seems upwards of
Right.
30 plus, approaching 40. There were suggestions purposely going after her breast implants or something, but that's also where, of course, the heart is. Stabbing someone is up close and personal. Years ago, people would ask me when I was first sent to the Unabomb case, could the Unabomber be Zodiac? And instead of killing people and shooting them up close, now he's bombing them. I said, no, it's two entirely different methods of operation, MOs of committing a crime. And we don't have that happen with the vast majority of the time. So I can't imagine, and there aren't that many professional hit people in the world.
Right.
Movies and TV
Right.
and books make it sound like more. So this was someone who was commissioned for some reason. They went in there, and I think, as we said last week when we summarized all this, they really wanted to send a message. They had no qualms of taking their right arm, left arm, whatever it was, up and down 30 to 40 times to make their point and get it across. Was it completely impersonal or a whole lot of anger there for some personal reasons? We don't know.
Wouldn't that then
I would say it's somewhere in the middle, most likely. And the staging part, I'm not sure. They could have staged a car accident if they wanted to. A little tricky to do that, but and no one would even know it was a homicide. They wanted to let people know it was a homicide, and they wanted to shut up everyone else around her. She became a figurehead, I believe, to this crowd of women and other hangers-on. You better not say what we think you know out there about Kyle McDonald or something else to do with that. And this is what's going to happen to you. Brutal and
so that being said, though,
nonstop.
The person who held the knife wouldn't have necessarily been the person who was personally, emotionally connected to her.
Very likely
Correct?
not. In other cases, yes, it would have been. It's usually the person, the significant other,
that's where the
ex-boyfriend,
weirdness
husband,
is.
whatever. This is something that was done. Again, I'm not going to use the word staging, but they wanted to make sure a point was made. They could have brought a gun, but maybe guns are harder to get in Canada, or certainly they didn't want the gunshot going off at 5:30ish or so in the afternoon. So a knife, of course, is just as deadly, and it's, of course, much more quiet, just as efficient. And instead of shooting her 40 times, why not stab her 40 times and get that point across?
That being said, though, right, like, it just is, it gets so, this is where it's confusing for me, right, as far as, like, the person who committed the actual crime. And I think you said, too, which I agree, is that we don't need to focus so much on who was holding the knife, because it's kind of clear that those people, somebody else told them to, or whatever.
Sure, they were the operators.
Then that being said, the confusing part is then how did they have so much rage to do that? And then I guess this is leading me up to the thing that I kind of wanted to put your guys' attention, was that I think you said, I don't know if there's the cartels in Canada the same way as, you hear about drug cartels chopping people's heads off, right? So it's like, it's not like it seems to me from what I've seen that if they're directed by somebody above them to do something, they would be brutal and cut their heads off, do whatever they need to do to send this message. My answer, then, now this is kind of another serendipitous thing that happened to me, which was, I guess let me ask, if something's been published in the newspapers in Canada, can I talk about it and say the people's names?
I would say if it's already public source,
it's public knowledge, yes.
It's public knowledge. Okay. So there was a business associate of Jason who was involved in one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in Canadian history. I think I won't say his name, even though if you Google it, it's right there. And there is a picture of Lindsay out in a social setting, and she's got her arms on this side. It's Jason, and on the other side, it's this guy, who just recently got arrested, I think, within the past month, and he was in Dubai. So they're associated, Jason and this person. So I was just wondering and looking up online, has anyone made this connection up between Lindsay and Jason and this guy? His first name is Greg. If you look him up, you can find him. I think if it's published, I could say his name is Greg Martel. There's a picture of him, Lindsay, and Jason together, arm in arm. Then I went on the Greg Martel because I realized, whoa, he just got caught. He was on the lam like a month ago. So I'm looking and I'm kind of Googling, and you know how you look at the comments on like a newspaper article and people can comment at the bottom.
Sure.
I scrolled all the way down, and then there was just one person, you know, you can have a handle. I don't know who it was, but they hadn't made any. Someone had said, hey, isn't this guy knows Lindsay? I wonder if this is connected. And I just kind of went blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden somebody mentioned, it was a bizarre sentence, something like, this person ratted his bro out. But they said a name. I Googled that person's name. And he just got arrested in Mexico. They call him the new El Chapo. And he's a Canadian. He used to be an Olympic snowboarder. He's from Canada. He's responsible for 90% of the drugs. He's connected to 6 or 8 murders. And they connected randomly. I look it up. He just within the month has been arrested in Mexico. And they call it his nickname. And he was on the FBI top 10 wanted $10 million reward for this guy. And he's Canadian. And he's responsible for, I think they said 10 tons of cocaine that he brought into Canada, 80 to 90% of the drugs or something. So it's all possible that somewhere down the line, these people, if they're involved in drugs, are involved with this dangerous guy. And he's from Canada.
What you say is very, very true. But let me, based upon what you've seen and what you know, who do you think benefits the most from silence in this case?
I go back and forth. I get so frustrated, but I think that it was a message. I think it had to be a message of some sort of organized crime group. And I think there's a lot of people that it seems like this little town in Canada wouldn't have that sort of organized crime involved in it. I've read stories about the Spanish Police Department having time. I've read stories about I read a big article about how it's a huge problem in Canada that real estate agents launder money for the drug cartel. Mm-hmm. And it was a whole study that I read an article in Canada. They did a massive statistic study that a lot of real estate agents unknowingly are laundering money for drug cartel, you know, and I just think that there, in my mind, if I narrow it down, because if you don't narrow it down, I get frazzled and frustrated and mad. There's so many people that could or could not be involved. I think probably are. There's a lot of mistakes that were made, as what was her name, Lisa, the EMT, pointed out about the mistakes about the crime scene when they didn't have the booties on and they didn't have the gloves, and that to me just blows my mind. I'm just from watching crime shows, I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean?
Well, there's 2 comments that came across our screen. The one comment was that Jason and his friends are protected by his mother and her connections. Do you find that to be true?
I find that a lot of what I've read, that this is probably the case.
Based upon what you read or based upon what people have told you, Tanya?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Another question came across. Let me throw this in too, so you can discuss it as well. They want to know if there's a conspiracy that someone in the police department may be involved in the
I mean,
Saanich Police Department.
I've heard that. I've never been told that. Well, I've never been told firsthand knowledge about anything of that. I have heard that Shirley was close friends with somebody that was in the police department, but I don't know.
With that said, you know,
And the owner of the house.
People can make those statements, but unless you can back those statements up with something concrete, you know, it's important not to throw things out there and defame people unless you have something there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would be hard to, you should be able to just ask her, was this person your friend? In my opinion, if they have nothing to hide, why can't we say, hey, Shirley, did you know this guy? And she says yes or no. That's what I would love to happen, for everyone to just be open and honest, but that's obviously not happening. And for different reasons, who knows? They're scared. They don't want to be in the public eye. There's a million things. And then I always come back to, even if Ray, Fitz, and myself, we solved it 100% in our minds, we know what happened. It still needs to be the police department that comes, or whoever's responsible for the case, correct? Like, don't they have to be the ones who go and nail it down and bring it to whatever the Attorney General is in Canada? I forget. They need the evidence, like you said, right?
Sure. A law enforcement entity, be it Saanich PD or some task force that's put together, they were the ones ultimately taking it to the courts and running the investigation first of all, then eventually taking to the courts. Real quick, someone just put a message up who's listening live that it's interesting that in that small town, everyone seems to know each other, but no one knows anything. That pretty well sums up
what
the
they
last
do,
18
though.
years, I think. What's that?
I believe that they do, obviously.
Well, that's
at the very least.
Of course, that's the appearance.
The thing that also bothers me is that, as we've said, 30 to 40 stab wounds. Did they call the hospitals to see if anybody came in with a cut on their hand? Were there no footprints? What about DNA? I find it impossible, literally impossible, for someone to be stabbed across the neck, all over that many times, and they don't have DNA. Did they test it? These are all the questions we don't know, right? Like,
yeah, I agree. You know, I think those are great questions. Well, let me say this, and Jim just made a statement from one of our guests that are listening to us live. But in your estimation about everything that you know, what truth do you believe people are afraid to say out loud?
In my opinion, I believe that the people aren't, I guess it's more than just a one-fold answer. They are protecting themselves, and people that know that are involved in it are protecting themselves, obviously, or afraid of somebody above them that directed them to do it, that they've been threatened. I don't, in my opinion, her direct group of people, meaning her girlfriends from elementary school and all that, like, I don't think that they necessarily know exactly, but they've probably heard bits and pieces. Maybe some of them do. Here is a reason, or loyalty, whoever it is that they're involved with the crime. They have blind loyalty to, or something.
And because Lindsay was executed with extreme prejudice, which was probably the marching orders for the murder team, that scares this group of friends from saying anything themselves. Exactly. I'm not sure one stab wound. I mean, you still have a person dead for knowing something that she shouldn't have known, heard something she shouldn't have heard. But I guess 40 stab wounds, give or take 10.
Nobody's surviving
that. Makes it even scarier. And I think I think the question that, and Ray, you asked Tanya a question, but I think the question that really sums up this entire investigation and certainly the motivation, it's actually two part. What did Lindsay know and when did she know it? And if those two questions could somehow be answered, she hinted something to her father, Jeff, your uncle, that she knew something big, and but she can't tell him now. And boy, if only that information had been made known, back then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to change, of course. But there's something she saw, she knew, and I have a feeling that at least some of her friends knew what she saw. She's again this outgoing, highly socialized person. I'm sure she knew some secrets to keep, but there may
Yeah.
have been a better girlfriend or two or three that she confided everything in, personal, professional, and maybe even criminal. And that word then, like the game of telephone, went back to a few
Yeah.
different people. Someone whispered to their boyfriend, "Don't tell anybody."
Yep.
No, Lindsay told me that this, and then the boyfriend went to his buddy, "Hey, I got some
Not
information.
realizing how
This Lindsay
bad it was.
chick, she knows
Yeah.
something, and she may be talking." And then the word was made. We got to put a message out there because they probably felt a number of people. They couldn't take out a whole group of 4 to 8 girlfriend, young women in their early 20s. So they figured they'd get the figurehead,
Right.
maybe the prettiest, maybe the
Also,
most
she was on
social,
a lot of
take her
billboards.
out. Excuse me?
She was on a lot of billboards too. I don't know if you guys know this. That I think she had her picture featured. Like there's that professional picture of
Oh, yeah.
Max Mosen. She's beautiful. Also, she was popular. So like even maybe there's so many maybes. Maybe they were breaking up Jason and Lindsay, and they were like, well, everybody knows Lindsay, and what if she? And plus, who knows if Jason is involved? Like, we got to do a twofold thing where we send him a message, and everybody knows Lindsay. Everyone's going to hear about this, and we can kill two birds with one stone. Because now, if Jason was involved with these people, not necessarily setting up the murder, let's say, there's all these let's says, he's afraid too.
Let me say this too, and I've been involved in cases just like this, except there's been multiple victims that have been killed. And unless you create an environment where the people that live in that environment feel safe,
Yeah.
you're never going to solve anything because there's
Yeah.
fear that's running up and down the highway here. And these people are scared to death that if I say something, I'm next. They have to, you have to create an arena where they feel safe. And
How do you
until
do that?
do that, well, it's easy. It's really easy. You have to have committed law enforcement and committed prosecutors to be able to do that. I've done it. I've done it.
And there's a problem right there.
I've done it.
With and all kinds of technology today through court orders of interception of communications. We don't have to get any more detailed than that, but there are ways of listening to people's conversations. People get jammed up on drugs all the time
Yeah.
and arrested, and no one wants to go to jail. And someone out there in this coterie in Western Canada, and who knows how far north or, well, probably more south that it'll expand, knows what happened back then. And it's the least that they're worried about. Whoever set this up is this group of young women that are now, I guess, in their 40s, probably moms, whatever. Lindsay never had a chance to go that route, of course, because she was snuffed out when she was. But they're probably just as concerned, whoever set this thing up, with other people around them who are still selling drugs, who are still involved in transportation of some sort of illegal material, and they're carrying that secret. And one of them gets jammed up for something, they're going to want to talk and make a deal. And and again, who were the badasses 18 years ago? They may still have some power and notoriety about them, but they're not going to be the same as they were back then. They're not going to recruit some male and female couple to come in and stage a bunch of violent acts like this. So, but the Saanich PD has to be able to start bringing together their resources internally and externally,
Yeah.
and once and for all saying the 20th anniversary is coming up. This is the one damn homicide we've ever had, and we're nowhere near solving this thing than it was, at the end of February of 2008. And I can't imagine any of them looking at themselves in the mirror if they didn't take every single step they possibly could to solve this. And I'll still have a few more words
Same. I
when
know
we
it's
wrap
so
up
weird.
here.
Well, let me make my statement here with this thing in the Saanich PD. My concern with the Saanich police in the handling of Lindsay's murder is not simply that the case remains unsolved. I mean, look, a lot of complex murders take years to solve. My concern is their reluctance to seek broader outside assistance.
Yes.
When you have a case like this that's highly organized, targeted homicides with strong indications of planning and possible multiple offenders, a fresh investigative review is always critical. New investigators.
Also, it's probably not just localized in Victoria.
Yeah, but new investigators bring fresh perspectives. They challenge assumptions, and they often identified opportunities that were missed. I mean, the question that continues to surface is simple. Why not invite additional help? Whether that means independent case review by somebody, behavioral analysis, advanced forensic consultation, or collaboration with outside entities, there's no downside to that. At this stage, what Jim just said, with 20 years coming up, transparency and collaboration should be the priorities. Lindsay's family deserves answers, and the public deserves confidence that every possible avenue is being pursued. And I don't see that here. If there is a reason outside help has not been requested, then please come on this show and explain to us why not. Please.
Right. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. If everything is above, everything is fine. Swallow your pride if that's what it is. Swallow your pride. Think about if it was your child. Oh, you made a mistake? You made a mistake? If that doesn't seem like that's just the case. Because that, swallow your pride and say, we made a mistake, but let's do something about it. Let's get some help in. They made a public statement that they brought in the FBI to help at one point, which I've never seen anything. They've made a public statement. I saw the video. I think it was Chris, whatever his name, saying they had DNA. Okay, did you test it? Like what? ... It's just ... the circle on your phone. They never follow up on anything. How many times, even if you've cleared Jason Zalo, right? When let's say Gail comes to the police and says, here's this information that this person who was close to Lindsay gave to me directly. Here you go. Wouldn't you go back and say, hey, Jason, let's sit down at the police station. Gail just gave me this information about this girl. You must have known her. Let's talk about it. Was he ever re-interviewed? Was he ever brought back in to verify any tips that came in? Like, I don't understand.
These, I'm talking directly to the Saanich PD now. You are remiss as investigators if you do not take this investigation to the next level. If you do not bring in, as Ray eloquently said a few minutes ago, outside assistance from within Canada, within your province, certainly the country itself, RCMP, you will still run it. We understand the legal jurisdictional factors here, but I know there's been task force in Canada. I was part of one when the James Kopp was his name. He was killing abortion doctors, or at least shooting them, back and forth between U.S. and Canada. I was part of a task force with Canadian and FBI officials back in the late 90s. He was finally arrested in Ireland. He's still in prison now. But the point is, you can do this. You can make this request. Come on Cold Red, go into the VDOC Society, which Ray and I are both members, but probably most importantly is put together a task force in which these people, other agencies, and investigators can come in, and every single aspect of the case has to be turned over to them. Re-interviews have to be undertaken, and of all the parties involved here. If they lawyer up or whatever, okay, note that and find some other way to get information from them or about them. But you are
Exactly.
not doing your job, even if you weren't on the PD back in 2008. If you're in an investigative role now, if you're the chief, you are not doing your job if you don't bring in other people. It's no excuse to have the 18-year point going on 20 years, 2 decades, that you don't have more undertaken in this investigation to solve this case. So you really have no more excuses as far as I'm concerned. If you have an excuse, tell us, do something public, because I've been in 31 years. Between the two of us, Ray and I have close to 70 years in law enforcement, and we've never seen anything like this. It doesn't mean your case isn't difficult to solve or complicated, as Ray said earlier, but you need more. You need more firepower. You need more horsepower within your department. You don't have the experience. You need to bring in professionals that do. And if you don't, you are remiss. And I won't say you're incompetent now for what's done, but if you can't bring in other help here, you're only reinforcing a level of administrative incompetence that reflects upon your entire police department. Get something done and do it soon.
Not to mention somebody that's capable of that. What else have they done since then?
Absolutely.
You know, it's protecting your city. It's the oath that you take to go above and beyond, and obviously that hasn't happened. And it was refreshing for me to hear that that Gail said that the new guys, that she has confidence in the new investigators. And I believe Jeff said something about along the same lines. So I hope that they, as I said before, it would be beneficial to them as investigators. They obviously don't have the experience because there isn't that many murders. So they couldn't possibly have. So wouldn't it be great to sit in a room with you and other colleagues of yours, just on an experience level, to be able to bring some of the knowledge back to the Saanich Police Department? There's, like, as you said, there's just zero excuse to not do this.
You know, I've never known any police department. I know some law enforcement officers have egos. I don't know any of these police officers at Saanich PD, but I've never known any police department to refuse help in helping to solve a case, especially a cold case that I believe is very solvable.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
And when they do turn it down, Ray and Tanya, I mean, it makes you ask questions, and I'm not going to try to answer them here, but why? And again, what did the police department know, and when did they know it? I'll reframe that question earlier on about this case that they're not putting out there. And I'm not going to say anything criminal at this point, but I'll use the other C word, competence level or incompetence. And it really just comes down to now. And you know what? They put this task force together and they work it for a year or two, and it's still unsolved. You know, okay, you've tried your best. Maybe there'll be a break that comes up at some other point in the future. But with you doing nothing, with you keeping this in-house, internal, no one else but the same set of eyes over, the 18 years that this has been going on, you are failing to do your job. The people that hired you are not getting their money's worth, and certainly the Buziak family is not either. Because, right, it was Lindsay 18 years ago. Who knows if someone looks the wrong way with the wrong people up there in Saanich, and next thing you know, there's another massive stab wound to somebody and they die, or could be done in a different way. But maybe this is the place to get away with murders. Fortunately, it's only been one right now. So Saanich PD, I know we're repeating ourselves here. You owe it to your constituents, your citizens, and certainly the Buziak family to get off your duffs and do something about this case.
Or
bring
even
in
make
other people that know how to do it.
Or even make a statement. It's just crickets.
Well, they don't even statements, and that only does so much. Ray, are we kind of winding up here?
I think so, Jim. Tanya, you have anything that you want to share before we wrap up here?
I just want to thank you guys. I've been watching every episode, and it just, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate what you're doing. I recognize that you don't have to be doing this. You have so much going on. Now I see you pop up. I've seen Chuck pop up on the shows that I watch, and I'm like, hey, there they are. And so I understand that you have a lot going on, and I just really appreciate how much you care about this. And I would love to meet you both someday. You seem lovely. And yeah, I just want to thank you. I haven't had a chance to speak with you directly, and thank you.
Well, if I ever get up your way, I'll definitely look you up. And if you ever get down to the Philly area, please hit Jim and I up, and we'd love to have lunch with you.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And we'll bring Chuck Boyle's daughter. We'll invite Chuck too,
we'll bring Chuck too.
Yeah, actually, she was supposed to come and visit when we're going to get together, me and his daughter. So, yeah, I'd love that.
Well, we've solved a few cases with Chuck, and he was on back in January with this, and I did some comments there. Everyone, so thank you, Tanya. I do appreciate it. I'm going to switch gears just for 1 minute here, everyone. Certainly in the U.S., our big celebration's coming up this weekend, the 250th birthday of the U.S. on July 4th. And I hate to be the dark cloud person here, or the one who ponders like the worst side of life, but I just want I want everyone, but certainly our listeners, subscribers, our audience to be careful out there. A lot of things going on in the world and in this country. And just when you go to these celebrations in small towns or big towns, be careful if they're stupid enough and dedicated enough to rip up the reflecting pool in DC. I wouldn't be surprised if some of their adjacent type people with bizarre mindsets would do something even worse to do their best to downplay this celebration. So go out, have a good time, enjoy the fireworks and barbecues, everything you're doing, but look around yourself, look for suspicious people, know how to get down or get out, left or right, north or south if you have to, and same with your loved one, your kids and family members. So that's all. When we come back next week, let's hope it's been a great weekend and nothing bad has happened, but we do have our enemies internally and externally, and I just want everyone that we know, certainly our listeners who mean a lot to us, to be safe out there. Other than that, happy July 4th. Let's all have a real great time. Ray, final words, and I'll take us out.
Now, Jim says every week, Jim says, be aware of your surroundings. It's never more important than this week. If you see something, say something, but please be familiar with what's going on around you. Get your face and your head out of your phone and your eyes around what's happening. You'd be surprised what you're missing. So, Jim, that was great advice. I wish everybody a great and blessed 4th of July, and to our fan base and our family in Canada, we wish you a great 4th of July too, because as far as I'm concerned, you guys are part of us as well. So God bless everybody here.
It's all about that us being friends, right, Ray?
Hey? Absolutely. Hey.
There you go. Couldn't resist that, Canadian friends. So everyone, subscribe to Cold Red Podcast. Follow us on all Cold Red Podcast social media platforms. Check out our blog at coldredpodcast.com. If you're interested in our weekly case breakdown delivered to your inbox, subscribe to the Cold Red Report. The link is in the description. So we'll be back next week with another episode of Cold Red. Until then, stay safe. Have a happy 4th of July. And again, be aware of your surroundings. It just may save your life. And everyone out there, again, happy 250th birthday to our country. And see you next time on Cold Red.